Hello and welcome to the School Can't Experience podcast. I'm Lisa Reichelt and this podcast is brought to you by the School Can't Australia community. Caring for a young person who is struggling to attend school can be a stressful and isolating experience, but you are not alone. Thousands of parents across Australia and many more around the world face similar challenges and experiences every day. Today we continue Marissa Taylor's lived experience story, which we started in our last episode. In part one, Marissa shared the story of how each of her children experienced school can't in their own unique ways and how she felt forced into home education. In today's episode, Marissa talks us through how she has used low-demand parenting skills and particularly Dr. Ross Greene's Collaborative and Proactive Solutions or CPS method and how that has been really transformative to her approach to parenting. This is not exactly a CPS tutorial though, so before I hand over to Marissa, I thought it might be helpful to give just a quick summary of the key concepts of CPS for anybody who's not familiar. And there is a lot more information freely available online if you want to dig into this further. Essentially, CPS is a model for parenting without relying on rewards, punishments, or power struggles. The key idea is simple but powerful. Kids do well if they can. When they can't, it's because they're lacking the skills to meet expectations, not because they're unwilling. To figure out what's getting in the way, CPS uses a tool called the Assessment of Skills and Unsolved Problems. This helps us to identify the specific skills a child is struggling with and the exact situations where those struggles show up. Once we've identified the problems, CPS then offers three options. Plan A is when the adult imposes a solution. It's often what we go to first. It's a pretty traditional parenting approach, but it does tend to escalate things. Plan C is when we temporarily drop the expectation to reduce conflict. And Plan B, the sweet spot, this is where we are working with the child to understand their concern, share our concern, and solve the problem together. It's about collaboration, not control. And for many families, it's been a real game changer. Now, let's get back to Marissa. We're going to pick up the episode now as Marissa begins to talk us through how the move to home education coincided with some big new challenges.
Home is a safe space. Trying to say to them, well, now you're going to do schoolwork on top of that wasn't necessarily going to be the right thing. For my third oldest child, they went into a complete full burnout. So they completely shut down at home. There was no way I was going to get any kind of learning happening. So I really had to rethink and re-examine everything. And that will kind of segue us into Dr. Ross Greene's work, because this is where it all came to a crunch.
Beautiful. Let's hear about that.
Where that's played into my life was really because I was stuck. I was really stuck. I knew I had to change things. I knew I had to change my approach. I didn't know how. I didn't know what that was. I didn't fully understand how to make it all work and what steps to take. When I learnt about Dr. Ross Greene's work, I was like, cool. I kind of get that. I was kind of on that space anyway. So if you understand Plan B is basically a collaboration between you and your child. I was kind of already on that page. I just didn't really realize that I was still a Plan A parent. So a Plan A parent is the traditional type of parenting where you're still thinking about rewards and punishments and all that kind of stuff.
And you have a way to get things done and your job is to get the child to do what you want them to do, yeah?
Exactly. A lot of I'm the parent, you're the child, you do as I say kind of parenting. Mm-hmm. And that's when I started learning about the process and the reason why we don't want to do the Plan A parenting anymore or traditional parenting. Also collided with me learning about PDA. So when you learn you've got a PDA child or pathological demand avoidant child, you're starting to learn already, okay, traditional things aren't working. We've been there, we've done all the traditional things, and if they were going to work, they would be working. We wouldn't have school can't kids, we wouldn't have kids in burnout. So I already had this general idea that those things don't work anymore. What is going to work? So once I started really taking a deep dive into it, and I do many deep dive, I was Googling it, I was living and breathing every single YouTube I could think of to learn about it. I read The Explosive Child and then Illume Learning, this beautiful, beautiful company in Queensland, I think they're Queensland based, decided to run some online workshops. And I was like, yes, I am on board. That just kind of brings it all together when you can actually talk to Dr. Ross Greene and really get the niggly questions you want answered. That really does help. You don't necessarily need it, but it does help the process. But what I really had to focus on was the plan C, which was letting go of your expectations. You know, letting go of the things that you thought were important in your life really aren't. When it comes right down to the nitty gritty of it, your children's mental health, their life, their well being prioritizes everything, because I didn't have kids to bring them into the world to watch them fade away. That's not why I became a parent. It's not why I became a mum. It's not what spurred me to have a family. Even though you might have an ideal of what your family is going to look like and the direction you want to head in life, they are still expectations. It doesn't mean that they won't happen if you let go of the expectations, but they are still expectations. You're asking your kids to live up to a fantasy world that doesn't exist yet. So that was really a lot of the hard work, was letting go of the expectations.
So, Marissa, can you give us some concrete examples of some of the things you remember plan seeing as being an important part of that process?
Everything. Everything.
But like what? Give me a couple of examples.
Letting go of the fact that the kids learn from books. And I'm still fighting this point, but devices are still such a divisive topic in the community. And
Yeah.
I had to learn to let go of those expectations too. I really had to see things from a different point of view, and that if devices is what got my children engaged, if it's what regulated them, I'm not doing them an injustice by allowing devices into the home. I'm not doing them injustice if they are getting a benefit from devices. It's a whole shift in the way you think and view the world. And you really have to, your mind really has to make that shift.
Yeah.
Because if you're still stuck in this is bad and this is good, if you're putting morality into the equation, then you're missing the development stages. You're missing the skills stages. And
And not just morality. So, like, if I think about two things that I really struggle with, one was toothbrushing, like
yeah,
having that fight twice a day, every day. It's not ideal. I don't love it, but you can't have a good relationship with a child when you're having that same fight twice a day. And then the other one that I, for some reason, found really, really difficult was meals at the table. Like,
that was one of ours.
it kind of pains me a little bit that he still eats in his room because we're not at the point where anyone's got the energy to have that kind of conversation. It's funny. It's big things and also teeny tiny things. And sometimes the
Yeah.
tiny ones that can be really hard to give away.
I had to really undo that myself too. The way I explained it to a friend of mine who questioned me on the same thing about the dinner table, because for some reason we have this, I don't know if anyone is of the age to remember Leave It to Beaver, the sort of 1950s family where you're sitting around the dinner table and everyone's happy and telling you about your life and your day, and it's all airy fairy, like it's all happy families. That's kind of how we grew up, even though, you know, I was a child of the 80s. It's just kind of how we all grew up. Like everyone comes together at the dinner table and that's how it is. And because I'd already gone through that process of letting that go and letting go of that expectation, when a friend came to me and said, you know, how did you do it? And I said, the first thing you have to remember is that a table is just a table. It doesn't represent anything. It's a piece of furniture. It's a plank of wood on some steel. You can't have a relationship with a table. You can't connect with a table. So you have to really start to empathize and use your own skills in empathy to really say, I don't need to connect with my child through the dinner table. It's not a conduit. It doesn't represent anything. It's just this ideal that we've held on to for so long.
And that battle destroys the connection. It doesn't build the
Exactly.
connection.
Exactly. And if you're constantly in battle, then you're on opposite sides. You're not connecting. You're not together. You're not on the same page. So you're really in battle with your children rather than in connection with them. So you just have to let that go. Let that fantasy go. If your child is naturally watching TV around dinner time and they want to have their food while watching TV, what's stopping you from eating with them, watching the same thing and saying, hey, I know nothing about this. Can you tell me about it? That is connection. That is opening the lines for connection to happen. It might not be something that interests you and it might be boring and not stimulating for yourself at all as an adult. But you want to get to know your child. You want to get to know what's going on in their life, in their world. And if that's what it is exciting them, then you want to know about it. You don't have to like it. You don't have to make it your world. You just have to know about it and know enough about it that you can say, oh, hey, the next episode's on. Oh, did so and so fix whatever's happening? And you're getting their attention, you're connecting in with them. And if you have those micro moments of connection and your kids are with you, they're on the same page as you. And that's more important than battling over some fantasy ideal that we somehow keep in our head.
Yeah. It's a really useful way of thinking about picking your battles, right? And reducing the demand and reducing the friction between you and your kids. Is it something that you're still using on a daily basis now?
Every day. And my kids plan being mean now. They just don't know
Oh,
what
really?
they just don't know what it means. So, if my child wants something to eat and I'm off making it and I'll say, hey, can you come and grab this on your way through to wherever you're going? They might say, well, you can do that and I'll just go to the table. Sure, I can do that. There is no reason to make that a battle. You don't have to go down that road. You can just think about it and go, you know what? I can do that. I can take myself over to you. The goal is that they have something to eat and drink so their bodies are nourished. That is the most important part about the whole issue.
It's all such a massive mindset shift, isn't it? From how I assume you grew up, certainly how I grew up, of like discipline and do what you're told and don't be
Yeah.
lazy and all of these things. And I think it's just, even if you've been doing this for a while, it's still a daily struggle, isn't it, to remind yourself away from that old way of thinking and keep yourself in the new way of thinking and trust the new way of thinking.
Yes, I'm a very strong advocate in this area because I've seen it work and I know it works. I put myself into a position where I was like, okay, if I'm going to have therapists on board, the therapists are going to be on board with what we're doing because I know it works. The therapists that we have in our lives now, they are purposely built team, I guess you could say, where I said, look, this is how we are as a family. This is the path that I'm on. I really need you to be on board with this. If it's something that you have a problem with, then we're probably not going to get on very well. So I wanted to set it out from the outset before we got 7, 8 sessions into it and realize, okay, you're the wrong supports for us. So I really put it up front. And I am so thankful that I did because I have built such a really wonderful care team that supports the way we do it. But not only that, I really put faith in the therapist that they were going to trust me and my process and trust my children because we do all our therapy via telehealth. I have children that will not show their face on screen. I've got children who won't talk to therapists. So a lot of the time they're seeing me, they're not seeing my kids. So I really had to ask for them to trust me and trust the process. And even when they started having doubts, I'm like, look, all I can say to you is please trust the process because I've seen it work. I know it works. And I just need you to have faith. And I'm so thankful that they were on board because they're starting to see the benefits. So even if they just get a glimpse of a child as they walk through where they never would before, whether the child pops their face on the screen and says hello and waves and they disappear, they're now seeing the benefits of the plan C, letting go of the expectation, following through on my instinct as a parent.
Such a reversal of the traditional power structure, isn't it? Where it's like,
Mm.
ooh, they're the experts. I have to sit here and listen to them and do what they say. And it feels like, from a therapeutic point of view, from an educational point of view, you've really sort of flipped the script on that, and you are setting the agenda. And
Well, absolutely. And it's a lot. Like, you really have to find the right people who you can say, look, I know myself, I know my kids, I know the path that we're on, and this is the way I want to move forward. Can you move forward with me? And it's not easy to ask someone in that kind of a position to do that, because there are some therapists who won't. There are some therapists that want what they find, whatever their agenda is, that to be the only thing that matters. And I
yeah.
really had to come from a place of, look, I've got kids and I'm not going to force them. So you have to really work with us the way we work, and then have the patience to see. But before we move on, the other crucial part to Dr. Ross's model, which I think a lot of parents forget exists, is the assessment of skills and unsolved problems. That is huge, because as you're plan seeing, as you're letting go of those expectations, which I always explain to parents, especially when you've got PDA kids, this is your low demand parenting. This is where you're letting go of those expectations and really just sort of letting your child have some autonomy and taking over a little bit. A lot of parents go, okay, I've done this, but what next? This is where Dr. Ross Greene's model really starts to come to life, because it's giving you that next step. It's giving you that checklist of skills that we all need as humans to be well in life. You know, we can't make decisions if we don't have our skills in hindsight, forethought, and reflection. All of that, they're skills. These are skills we need in life. We can't move forward if we can't communicate with people, regardless of what kind of communication that is. We all have to have a form of communication with other human beings so our needs can be met. So that is a huge piece to the puzzle that you really have to bring into the model, and you can't forget about it, because that's what helps you do all the investigative work that you need to do as the parent, as your plan scene. So you're not stuck, you're not doing nothing at all. You're going, okay, my kid has issues in transitioning. Who do I see about that? What help do I get from that? What does that even mean? So, you know, whether you're reaching out to a psychologist or an occupational therapist or a speech therapist, or, you know, reaching out to a community, you're trying to figure out what that means for your child and how you can help your child through transitions. That's a huge part of the model that you can't forget. And we're always constantly working on or towards something and resolving that unsolved problem that's getting in the way of your child doing well.
Marissa, do you think people forget it, or do you think they just get overwhelmed by it? Because, you know, speaking on behalf of a friend, like, I've downloaded the thing and looked at it and just gone, oh my God. Even the
Well,
examples you gave are very granular. And it's like, I'm going to have the biggest, longest list. How
I,
is this going to make life easier for me? Just having
yeah,
more
no,
things that I
I'll
know
be
what I have to
honest.
do.
Like, we've been at this for about 4 to 5 years now. One of my children still ticks all of the boxes. So it's not like we've resolved like a lot of things. We have resolved some things. And a lot of that comes with time and development. If we look at the brain science of child development, the brain itself does not stop developing till the mid to late 20s. So if you've got a 10-year-old child, they're still looking at 15 plus years of development of their brain. You're not going to resolve things overnight. You're just not going to. That's the realistic part of growing up and developing. You're not going to resolve everything overnight. So if you come into this thinking it's all going to happen, and, you know, in 2 months' time everything's going to be great and on its way, no, it's an unrealistic expectation. From the simple fact, from child development, our brains don't work that way. And that's why these things do take time. A lot of parents will go into the questioning side, so the plan B, trying to figure out from the child what's going on for the child. But if the child doesn't have the words or the articulation to say this is the problem, how can they explain to you what's going on for them? You're going to get a lot of I don't knows, I'm not sure, or they're just going to shut down on you because even they can't articulate. I'm a 47-year-old woman. Sometimes I can't articulate what's going on for myself in my own experience. And my brain is supposedly fully grown and developed now. So I'm still having to go through, okay, what skills am I missing? Where have I not developed the right skills, or where do I need more development for myself in order to do well as a person and as a parent? So
Have you done your own lagging skills audit on yourself?
exactly. Plan B yourself. You can plan B your whole family.
I love that.
It's a free little list and you can do it for everybody. And that's the brilliant thing about Dr. Ross's Greene's model too. It's not just about parenting. It is about being a human and moving through this world as a human being and the skills that you need to move forward in life. So this relates to your relationship with your partner or spouse. It's how you get along with your colleagues, your bosses, your employees. It's how you relate to other human beings. If you have a breakdown in communication, communication is a two-way street. So if you're breaking down with communication, then you have to figure out, okay, where am I going wrong? And how can I meet the other person on the other side? You have to be working in collaboration with whomever you're speaking to. And it's the same thing. Empathy is a two-way street. We're not just asking you to receive empathy from people. You have to then understand, how can I see life through their eyes and understand what issues they're facing. It's a two-way street. That's why collaboration is so important, because a lot of the skills that we want our kids to exhibit are not one-way street skills. They're two-way street skills. We have to be able to model them in order for our kids to learn what that looks and feels like, in order for them to demonstrate it. And if we're not doing that because we don't have the skills or we don't know, then yeah, you're going to struggle. I had to do my own learning in emotional intelligence, which directly leads to emotional regulation. And I started learning this around 41, 42-ish. And so it kind of blew my mind. I thought we just fumble through life and we all figure out how to handle our own emotions from our experiences. But no, turns out that's not the case. There's actually a really good skill set that we have to learn in order to control our emotions, in order to deal with our emotions. And 99% of us did not grow up understanding that at all. And then when I started learning about emotional intelligence, I was just like, oh my gosh, no one told me about this. No one put me aside and said, okay, Marissa, you need these skills. Let's build them up for you. So I'm going through my therapy and building that up and doing all the work myself now as an older woman. And I'm going, this would have been really helpful when I was a teenager, or this would have been really helpful when I was a kid. And now I have to learn it so I can then teach my kids. And a lot of that is through co-regulation.
Yeah.
You learn it through co-regulation and being regulated from the outside.
It's such a big part of the job, isn't it? Assisting with that co-regulation. And I think that's a really good point that you make, that you need to have your own set of skills in order to be able to provide that to
Yeah,
kids. Everyone just assumes that we come with it ready built, right?
yeah, and that's it's another good point, that it's really confronting as an adult, because you're the one that's supposed to know everything, and you're the one that's supposed to have all the answers and have it all figured out. And then when you get to a point where you're like, well, I don't have all the answers. I don't have it all figured out. And you really have to start moving forward from there. You do get stuck feeling the weight of all that, all the pressure that you get, particularly where there's a lot of parent blaming and parent shaming. You do start to feel that, and you start to think, well, maybe it is me. And you really have to learn how to numb all the noise out and bring it back to yourself and bring it back to your family and say, no, what do I need? What do my children need? And how do I move forward from here? And that's hard. It's not an easy process. It does take time, especially when you've got friends and family who also do not have faith that you can do these certain things. You really have to learn how to shut them out and say, you know what? I know myself, I know my children, and I know what we need. And even if that is just basic mental health, like we need to make sure that we're in a good mental health space and we're not constantly in dysregulation and constantly in a spiral of anxiety and depression. Even if that is just your main focus, that is still one step forward.
It's very true, Marissa. But I wonder whether you have had moments where you've stared at the ceiling in the middle of the night going, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing?
I still do. Still do.
I find that so reassuring to hear you say that.
I still do. Like I said, we are so conditioned by society and the world. And it's really hard to flip it on its head and say, you know what? No, that is not the way it's supposed to be. You really have to trust the science and trust the knowledge that we are getting through. And I think this is something that's really, really difficult because we are up against governments and systems that are still very much from the behaviorist point of view. And so it's really hard to come back on that and say, well, hey, you're wrong. And this is how it is. It's really hard when you're inside those systems that are saying, no, this is the way forward. And you're coming at it from a completely different approach. But this is where a lot of the, like, for example, Dr. Ross Greene, Dr. Dan Siegel, Dr. Stephen Porges, who does a lot of the polyvagal theory, Dr. Mona Delahooke, who does the interpretation of neuroscience and puts it into parental education, Dr. Vanessa Lapointe, who works with our own Maggie Dent. There are alternatives. We have the research over decades, not just a decade, but over 75 years of research into human behavior, child development, brain development, emotional development. There is a lot of science to back this up. And when you put your faith and trust in that and you go, okay, let's give it a go, it works. But it does take a lot of us letting go of those expectations and demands and just letting the process take over. And surprisingly, when you do that, you start to reflect upon yourself and say, why didn't I have this as a child? Or why couldn't this have happened in my early 20s when I was fumbling through life? Why couldn't someone just say, hey, this is the way forward and you can have this? It would have made life so much better. But unfortunately, it's us now as parents with kids that are struggling, and we're starting to learn it from scratch now. But once you put the work in, you get to the other side of it. And I mean, my life now is not picture perfect, but we're not in crisis anymore. And when
Yeah, I was going to ask that. You've been doing this like 4 or 5 years
yeah,
now. How's the family doing?
better, like I said, it's not picture perfect. Two of my children are now adults who are still trying to find their feet in life, but they are moving forward in their own way, in their own time, getting the support that they need for their goals. It's not about school anymore. It's not about me or what I hope for them. It is about their life and how they want to lead their life. It's not that you stop being a parent. You're always a parent, but you take a little bit of a back seat and you start to become the supporter and the champion for your child. With my younger two kids, I put them straight through to home education. I didn't put them into the mainstream system because I'd already had experience with not being supported. They are two kids that have much higher needs. They are 9 and 7 now, and they are starting to become aware that they school differently. They are different to other kids. This is one of the brilliant things about them being exposed to certain things on YouTube, which a lot of people don't like. But they're starting to understand that, kids grow up and they get detentions, and kids grow up and get into trouble, and kids get into trouble for doing homework. You can still have learning can't issues, especially when you have neurodivergent children and PDA kids. But inside home education, you have the flexibility of going, you know what, if this can't be done right now, that's okay. We don't have any deadlines and we don't have any pressure to meet anything or meet any expectations except for our own. And if we're already in a place where we can let go of those expectations, it's okay. My kids are still learning and they're thriving. And I think that's the most important part.
Absolutely.
So I'm still reflecting on my life and figuring things out for myself. So I don't feel like I've got it all together. But all I can say to you is it's working and we're in a much better place. I've got kids that want to live now. That it's the opposite of where we were. I've got kids that are thriving. We're getting a lot of help and support now, and life is it's working. It's not perfect. It's not exactly where we thought we would be, but it's working. I can't ask for better than that, honestly.
Amazing. Let's move on to our final 3 questions.
Okay.
If you could go back in time and tell yourself something, when would you go to and what would you say?
For myself personally, I'd go back to myself as a little child. Because when you start doing this work of reframing everything, you realize that it starts way back when you were a little kid and you were first learning things in life. If I could say anything to myself, I would probably go back to about 4 or 5 year old little me and just tell myself that you're going to be okay. Because I think, especially when you're an undiagnosed person moving through the world, you really take on board the negativity that people say about you. You know, you really start to believe, well, maybe I am just lazy, or maybe I am just a helpless, hopeless human being. You really start to onboard all of that negativity from such a young age. So if I could, I would just say to myself, no, you've got this, you'll get there and you'll know how to do it and you'll do it well. And just give myself that confidence from such a young age to hopefully change that negative experience that we generally have. And it all starts from childhood.
Yeah, that's beautiful. For everyone who's listening, who's on whatever part of the school can't journey that they're on right now, what would you like to say to them? What would you like them to know?
Understand regulation. In our community, we are highly stressed. It's not just our kids that are going through it, we are going through it too. And we can't do our best thinking, we can't do our best decision making when we are emotionally hijacked ourselves and living from our own fight flight response. If I reflect back on my own journey, it wasn't until I made the decisions to get us to a place of regulation where we could just have that moment to breathe, get supports in place, and really start to figure things out. That's when the path became much clearer for us. Before then, I was just fumbling my way through trying to figure out what we needed. But once you have that moment of time and space where you can really calm your nervous system, start thinking rationally about things, really start planning out, how is my life going to look realistically if I go down this path or if I do this? You can start to logically put things in place and explore all your options rather than just putting up a wall going, no, this is too hard and I can't do it. Find your space of regulation, find what's going to ground you as a human being so you can make the decisions you need to make for yourself and for your family.
That's excellent advice. Not always easy to do, but worth the effort.
Definitely.
And then finally, and I feel like I might know the answer to this one, what is a resource that you think everybody who has school can't young people should know about?
There's kind of two, really. So, or three. The obvious one is the School Can't website and parental peer support group. The second one is Dr. Ross Greene's collaborative and proactive solutions model. I do believe this is really the way forward for every human being because I've lived it, I've experienced it, I've seen the rewards from it and the fact that it does work. So, our group values is that kids do well if they can, and that is so true. And it's just the same. Parents do well if they can, educators do well if they can, everyone does well if they can. And the third one is to really explore your options. School is not the only way forward. We do have two other options in Australia, which are legal, viable options, which is distance education and home education. There is a group called the Educating Parents Homeschooling and Unschooling Group. It is the place where you can go to really just ask questions. Get to talk to other parents who've been in the same place as you, who've made the choices, who've made the decision, who've made the transition. And ask the questions that you really want answered. Ask the questions, how do you make it work when you're a full-time working parent? How do you make it work when you're a single parent? How do you make ends meet? How does it all work? And you will find the community there. And it doesn't matter if you make the decision or not to home educate or distance educate, it gives you that space to explore that option. And I think once you realize that there are thousands of parents making the same choices every single day, and there are parents that are in and out of the school situation where kids are going to school, then they're home educating or distance educating, and then back into the school environment. There are parents on various paths and various journeys. But once you realize that you're not alone in this situation and you have ways of making it work, it can give you that sense of ease in order to make a decision you never thought you had to make. Even if you didn't think your life was going to go a certain way or be a certain way, it gives you hope that you can get back to where you want to be in life. And yeah, create a community, because without community, you're really isolating yourself.
That is excellent advice. Well, Marissa, Thank you so much for spending all of this time with us today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for sharing so much of what you've learned on your journey as well. I know people will find it really reassuring, inspiring, and helpful.
No, thank you for having the time for me to come on.
Well, whether you are just learning about Dr. Ross Greene and CPS, or if you thought you were a bit of an old hand, I suspect all of us will be able to take new ideas away from Marissa's experience. For a start, I'll be going back to the Assessment of Skills and Unsolved Problems worksheet and having a look at it for both my son and myself. We've put links to CPS resources and all the amazing researchers that Marissa mentioned in the episode notes, as well as links to the School Can't Australia website, which has more resources, information about the Facebook support group, and a link to donate to School Can't Australia. Your tax-deductible donations assist us to raise community awareness, partner with researchers, produce resources like webinars and this podcast, which all assist people who are supporting children and young people experiencing School Can't. We hope to share many more lived experience stories, so if you have a School Can't story that you would like to share, please email us at schoolcan'tpodcast@gmail.com. It is not a scary process to share your story, and so many people benefit from hearing it, so please do give it a thought. If you're a parent or carer in Australia and you are feeling distressed, remember you can always call the parent helpline in your state. A link with the number to call is in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and we will talk again soon. Take care.